Hello, friends. My name is Steven. We're here for another episode of Page Chewing with P.L. Stuart, and we are here today with a couple of book bloggers that I'm really excited to be chatting with. Want to pick their brains and learn some things from them. So, P.L., do you want to start us off with an introduction and tell us about what you do?
Uh, Thanks, Steve, so much. Honored to be here again once more as Steve's co-host for Page Chewing. I believe this is episode 11, is it not?
Think so, yeah.
11, and we've dubbed this month Jam Pack June because of the amount of episodes we have, and again we have more star-studded guests, and I'm happy to be here. I'm P.L. Stewart, author of the John Kingdom Saga, and I'll turn it over to our guests to introduce themselves.
Hey everyone, I'm Blaise Ancona. I am the founder of Under the Radar SFFbooks.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Under the Radar B2. Started doing this about 2 years ago, and I recently did a podcast. PL was one of my guests, and that was a fantastic interview. Just here to talk about books and my love for them, and excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, hey everyone. My name is Mihir. I am part of Fantasy Book Critic. I've been a blogger since 2010, 9, 10, somewhere like that. I had the good fortune of being, introduced to Steve via thanks to Richard Nell in one of the, interviews that you did with him. It was so much fun. And then since then, I've gotten to know Steve better. Happy to chat with, Paul and you, Steve. And of course, this is my meeting with Blaise as well. So this is really exciting. So thank you for having me, guys.
Awesome. And right before we went live, we were talking about R. Scott Baker. Is it Backer or Baker?
Backer, I believe.
Backer, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
B-A-K-K-E-R.
I've been mispronouncing it all this time. So we were talking about how dark it is, and you have to be in a good place before you get into it. So what? And we were comparing that to Malazan and the kind of the similarities there. With have you both read both trilogies or just the first one?
I have read the first 7. I mean, the R. Scott Backer books are 7 books released so far. I've read all of them. Malazan, I gave up on book 5.
For R. Scott Backer, I've read the first trilogy, which was The Darkness That Came Before, the Warrior Prophet, and Thousandfold Thought, I believe they are.
Mm-hmm.
I read those like 5 or 6 years ago, and I definitely need to reread them because I feel like I was in the right headspace to give those books the appreciation they deserve. And this was before I read Malazan and The Wars of Light and Shadow by Janny Wurts. So I feel like my mind is better set to understand what's going on in those. But it's a brilliant series. You just need to be in the right headspace. It's very grim. It's very bleak. And it's a lot more philosophical and religious influence than I anticipated. So just if going into it, if you know that ahead of time, you should be okay. And it's very, the prose are very, very good, and they're very dense, very much like Malazan and Janny Wurts. So just have that in mind, and you should be fine.
We were actually starting a group read of that this month, so we're reading all of Backer's books. So
the second half about.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
So if either of you want to, or I know PL, I know you have a busy schedule, but if you want to join it.
Oh, I'd love to try. I was just before we started here. I was just saying that thanks to largely Steve and Zara, another great blogger from Books with Zara that was previously on an episode of Page Chewing with Steve and I, they've convinced me to read R. Scott Backer or Baker, and that's definitely, it sounds right up my alley, right? For anybody who knows about me and my works at Blaise, who's read it, and Steve, the whole religious themes, obviously that strikes a big chord with me. So, it sheds he liked it apparently.
Mm-hmm.
He liked it. Oh, we read the first trilogy. Okay, and I was just mentioning as well that I've been struggling with Malazan, appreciating a lot of things about it, but peer pressure. I blame Steve and these guys. I started Malazan and I'm loving parts of it and completely lost and again I think it's my pride being wounded, because as an author who considers himself someone who writes immersive worlds, and world building is a very big part of what I pride myself on, I pride myself on having the intellect to be able to comprehend a complex, plot. There's moments I'm just like, I don't know what's going on, and that's a scary feeling.
I'm going to tell you one thing. It's okay not to like or love Malazan. Join me on this side. There's a few of us who are like not Malazan fans, and it's absolutely okay. You can just say this is not for me. This is for somebody who loves them. Like Blaise and Steve, they love them. That's okay. And there's nothing against Steven Erickson or his giant sack. It's okay not to love them. If you don't want it, keep it aside. There's plenty of other books to keep you occupied.
Oh, yeah.
Mihir is correct. If you don't like it, it's perfectly fine. But I will give my 2 cents with Erickson's writing. He wrote Malazan with the perspective of anybody on a battlefield or in a great war could have a viewpoint perspective, even if it's just for 2 sentences. And you'll notice, like, I don't know how far you are in Gardens of the Moon, but you notice that he switches viewpoints very, very frequently. It's done on purpose. Some viewpoints last literally a sentence. That's it. And you never hear from him again for the rest of the series. Just having that mindset that any one person or being in the series could have a viewpoint. If you have that mindset, you should be okay if you want to pursue this. It took me, as I said before, took me 3 times to get through Gardens of the Moon before I finally had the courage to continue with the series. I'm glad I did. But yeah, it's definitely not going to be for everybody. And that's just the way books are. Like, not every book that, even the most popular books out there, some people just hate them. It is what it is. It's what we do where we do.
Yeah.
Well,
And
if
I
you're-
did struggle with book 3, with the Memories of Ice. It was
The best book in the series.
lots of points of views. Yeah, I did struggle with that one. We just had the discussion earlier today, but it's very dense. And like you said, the constant points of view change it takes some getting used to.
You guys are giving me some real comfort. Thank you for that, because I was feeling really stupid about not being able to even have a glimmer in some instances of understanding about trying to link all the plot threads and to see some of them were very clear. I understood how this related to this, and but what I'm doing right now is I'm as Blaise said, I will say the prose is fabulous. And a lot of the character work. There are, for me, too many characters to really digest easily at once, but some of the character work and some of my favorite characters is really good, and I'm a big character person. Some people are I think here, I'm not sure, please correct me if I'm wrong. I think I remember seeing or hearing you saying that you're much more of a plot driven reader, I think.
I mean, I love plot. Yeah, it's like a huge, if the plot is inventive, even if the characters are stereotypical, I'll be along the ride. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and from what I know of my friend Blaise here, he kind of both, like, he likes his characters, but he also wants something that's going to keep him engaged, a plot that's rolling forward. I'm very much a character-driven reader, extremely character-driven. I write that way. Not that I don't think I think my plots are garbage, but characters, that's how I read. Especially, it's what it's all about for me. But I find that Malazan, like, I wish I could get more out of the characters that I'm really the Tattersales and the people that I really end up, but then they disappear for like chapters at a time, and then it's not even like Game of Thrones where A Song of Ice and Fire where you could read every other chapter, you knew you're getting that character. If there's characters you didn't like, you're getting the other character later on, but this is just,
in this regards, I feel Backer is a little bit, Backer's work is a little bit stronger because it is pure. I mean, the world building and everything is there. It's like it's kind of like a pseudo Middle Eastern world, and I'm saying pseudo because it's like, I know the Backer fans will like to correct me, but it's kind of like that's how the premise starts out with. But there's a lot more. But it's very character driven. There's Akami, and I'm going to mispronounce the names, Kelhas. There's Esme, and these are all characters you only get like a limited POV through them throughout the entire series. And then there's one more, the Barbarian, Cniaur. Said no, I don't know, never know how to pronounce their names. But these have, the stories very character driven through them, and so you might like Backer more in that regards. But I feel like with Erickson also, he has his own characters. It's just that the world is so confusing that you kind of lose focus on the characters. And like, correct me if I'm wrong, please, right? Because would you say that?
Yeah. So at least at first, with Erickson, you can't. The characters, it was a hard time for me to latch on because the viewpoints switch so frequently. You never know when they're going to come back. It was more the first book. I think it's the first 2 or 3 books. You have to latch on to the plot and the world building and what he's trying to build. It's very much similar to Paul with Curse of the Mistwraiths. Book 1 is so dense, and Janny does that on purpose. Same thing with Erickson. He did this type of thing on purpose, and it's very difficult. That's why it took me 3 times to get through it. If you want characters to latch onto, and you push through it, there are characters there that have their moments and that they stick with you, but prepared, because, and I'm sure you probably heard this, book 2 takes place in a completely different continent with new characters, and then book 3 it's back to the original characters in this one. Book 4 same thing, another continent, and then book 5 a separate continent from that. So Erickson had to do this from the beginning to get you used to the different time jumps and going to another continent and starting from scratch, essentially, with all of these different characters. And some of these characters that you learn are my favorites in the entire series. But it's like restarting the clock. Some people are not prepared to do that. It's okay. But the ones who do, and the ones who persevere, they'll be rewarded for it. But no, I'm thick-headed, so I want to see what's going on. So
I'm the same way. I'm a completionist, and Steve knows me. Like, and so do you, Blaise. Like, I'm a Mihir, you'll get to know me. I'm a completionist, and I'm a planner, and I feel the need to, like, if I start something, I need to finish it. And I mean, I see that Steve's gotten a lot out of this series. Obviously, you have, Blaise. Now I'm hearing Mihir's point of view, which is really valuable. So at least now you give me the freedom to know that if I don't end up sticking out or liking it, that I would not. At least I tried it, right?
Yeah.
At least I tried it, and But I know, Steve, in your deep dives, I remember watching you when your deep dives in Malzen, and forgive, and I don't want to. I want to hear your perspective, Steve. But it sounds like for you, because you felt that like you were able to push through and kind of just ignore everything that you couldn't understand, and then just appreciate for things you could, and then that got you, like, is that how it went for your reading, like, of Malzen?
It's
like,
still the case, yeah. When I first tried Gardens of the Moon, I had to put it down because I didn't know what was happening, and I need to know, like, I need to know why this is happening, and I had to get past that and just read and just go along for the ride and just let go, because if you want to know everything that's happening, you will not enjoy the series. Even now in book 3, I want to know what's happening, and I still don't really I don't feel like I really know everything that's happening. So you just have to let that go and just kind of go along for the ride, because I drove myself crazy when the first time I read Gardens of the Moon. You just don't know what's happening.
And that's the big hurdle with the series. You don't know what's happening. You're not going to know until 6 or 7 books in, and even then, there's twists that you're not going to understand. It's done that way on purpose. So it's done that way going through when you read the series for the first time, the first 10 books, and you get to the end, and you have all, like, the revelations of what happens. You read it again, which I did. It's like you're reading the series for the first time, because there's between the lines and every single thing that Erickson puts in, he knows in his mind what he's trying to do, but your brain's not trained to see it. And when you have all the information and you read it again, you're seeing the little hints, you're seeing the revelations, you're seeing the dots being connected. That's what Janny does as well, Paul. I can tell you firsthand from experience. If you continue with it and you see, like, what's going on and the revelations, it'll make so much more sense going through it a second time. It's a series meant to be read multiple times. It's not meant to be read just once and forget it. And I love finding series like that, because I don't think they're super easy to find, and the ones who pull it off fantastically should be praised, like, to high heavens, if you can put it through. Like, I'm sure the Wheel of Time is similar to that as well, reading it multiple times, and I'm sure R. Scott Bakker's work is the same thing as well, which I want to get back into.
So, and I trust you, Blaise. I know you have a back. You wouldn't steer me wrong. But Mihir, you have not read Janny's work, correct?
No, I have read her trilogy with Raymond Feist, the Empire trilogy. I love her work. I love that trilogy. Like, it's one of my all-time favorites. Like, I'm still astounded to this day why nobody has picked them up and made them into, like, a Netflix TV show or like a TV series. Like, that would be perfect. But I haven't read her.
They actually are.
Yeah, they are.
Really?
It's coming. Yeah, they picked it up. Yep.
But I remember this was last year, right? They said that they had picked up the rights to the whole Magician trilogy and the Empire trilogy, but I don't know if it was already into production. Like, is it into production?
I don't believe so. I can't confirm or deny. I don't want to
Okay.
speak. Maybe Blaise might have more info on that, but I do know that it was picked up.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. Well, something to look forward to then.
I know they picked. I think they picked up some writers and they're putting together a cast. I don't think they've started shooting or anything. That's probably gonna be like a year down the road. But it is very much in production.
Fingers
so.
crossed then.
Yeah. And I know Steve has not read Janny Wurts yet. I think I've convinced him. I think hopefully to read her. But I just I know it's apples to oranges, and these are all brilliant writers, Erickson, Wurts, etc. But for me, Janny's work is extremely accessible despite the density, and maybe because her prose just transports me and just brings me into work where I start looking for certain things. And I don't. It was just organic for me that way, and that's just how I link with the writing. Erickson is different for me so far. That I despite that his prose is great and all that, it's a lot harder for me to access, right? But that's just me. Every reader is different, so But
no shame in that.
Yeah, no shame at all. So.
Join me, Paul. It's okay.
It's okay.
It is quite all right.
That.
Well, I'm gonna get through Guns. I'm about halfway in, and like I said, I'm gonna plug away. I got the first 3 books. I picked them up at the bookstore the other day, and my commitment is to read the first 3 books. If after the first 3 books, I'm gonna tap out. So we'll see what happens. I'll be relying on Steve's deep dives, be looking at those and watching those to try and help, unfog my brain a bit. But if I get to that point where by the 3rd book, then I'm done. Whereas Janny's series, I know for a fact, I'll read anything she writes. I plan to read every book she writes. The writing just connects with me, and that's just there's nothing I can do about that. So, but anyways,
that's a good benchmark. First 3 books, because Memories of Ice, my personal opinion, I think is the best book in the series. So if you get through those 3 and after that it's not for you, then it's not for you. If you love the 3 after reading them, then continue with the series. That's the perfect benchmark, is the first 3 books, because it can be kind of read as a trilogy and then it expands more and more and more. So
okay. Well, I want to know for both you gentlemen, you've been bloggers for quite a while, and obviously praised for your work as bloggers. What are your favorite books? What are your books, those series that of all time that they're up there? What are your go-tos that you're like, yeah?
That's a wrong question to ask of anybody, PL. I know you love books too. That's a very wrong question to ask.
I know, but I want to know.
I'm going to let go Blaise first, because I have a lot, so I'm going to just shut up.
Well, I will begin, but I do have some books to show, so I'll show and tell. I'll start from the top.
Love
my favorite series is John Gwen's Faithful and the Fallen. I fell in love with it when it first came out. It is perfect, like bridge gap for like classical fantasy into like the modern writing style or epic fantasy. I just love the character work. I love the plot twists. I love John Gwen's battle scenes, which is probably the best you can read.
Yeah.
My favorite series. I'm just going to give you my top 5, and then I'll show you some more. The next one is Stormlight Archive. Those are they're fun books. They're a lot dense. They're more dense than people give it credit for, I think. You never know what Sanderson's going to pull out of his hat with the world building. The magic system is what he's known for. And I just love that series. Number 3 is The Wars of Light and Shadow by Janny Wurts. I finished the series. Love it. It will forever be in my top 5. I'm planning on rereading it as soon as I possibly can, and that forever will be cemented. I love Jenny's writing. Number 4, I actually just finished this series. I'm going to show it to you. It's Ricardo Pinto's Stone Dance of the Chameleon series. The first book is called The Masters. Grimdark. It's just a dark fantasy like no other. It's grimdark. It's a Mesoamerican type story about an outcast named Carnelian and his father. They're returning back to the capital of Osrakum for the election of a new god emperor. Very, very grim, bleak. There's like a plague going on. There's slaves who They remove their eyes for looking on the masters. That's why you see them in masks. It's just very, very dark, but some of the most brilliant writing I think I've ever read in my life. So I will always promote this book. And he did the illustrations himself, Ricardo. So I love those.
Wow.
And number 5 is Malazan. It's always been placed in my heart, just rereading it. Not for everybody, but that's what it is. And a runner-up is Adrian Tchaikovsky's Shadows of the Yap series.
Yes.
Fantastic epic fantasy series. It combines industrialization with magic mysticism, and how the characters, they're called Kindin, which take certain aspects of insects. And the world building that happens, it's second to none. The creativity, the drive that Adrian has, the plot is brilliant. It's unpredictable, and every time I read it, it's just I can't say enough about it. So those are mine. And of course, Paul, I got yours right here, The Drowned Kingdom.
Oh my gosh, I don't deserve to be on that.
Yes. One of my favorites. I just finished, and I can't wait to continue the series. So those are mine.
I'm honored. I'm and my series isn't finished. I'm only on the third book, writing the third book now, but I'm humble. But thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, shout out to Shadows of the Yap, Adrian Tchaikovsky's. That is amazing. It's 10 books. It's completed, and it also has sub-series within it. So you can read the first 3, the middle 4, and the last 3. And he does these amazing things because all the Kindin they share aspects of insects, but then there's land Kindin, there's sea Kindin, and there's air Kindin, and it's amazing. It's mind blowing. Like the 7th book, I believe 6th or 7th book is like underwater, and it is again very underrated. It's complete, which I know a lot of readers are complaining that these huge books never get complete. It's completed. You can dive into it, and it's amazing. Plus, Adrian Tchaikovsky is an amazing writer as well.
My TBR is growing by the second.
Well, get ready for me to add to it as well.
Yeah. So that's amazing, Blaise. That's quite the list too. So Mihir, what do you got for us?
All right. So I can never select the top 10 because my list just keeps on increasing. I'm gonna I'll just say the ones which are in my mind right now. One of my favorite authors is a guy called John Connolly. He writes mystery thriller books, but it's with a hint of supernatural. He has a series called Charlie Parker, but this book he wrote it because the Book of Lost Things. This was from 2006. It is, to this day, the book which makes me cry even after I read it over and over again. It is amazing. And he is, if you like writers who like lyrical, who will tug at your heartstrings, John Connolly. And fantasy fans don't know him, but he is huge in the thriller mystery market, over on both sides of the Atlantic. I'm a huge fan as an Indian, I'm a huge fan of the Mahabharata. It's the world's biggest epic, but it has got everything. And one of my favorite writers wrote this book called, I don't know if you can see it, it's called Mrityunjay, the Death Conqueror. It focuses on one of the characters called Karna, who is this tragic hero, possibly one of the most tragic heroes ever to be found. And it's the story of the Mahabharata, but from his viewpoint. Again, I have read this over and over again. I love them to death. I also love the Ash and Sand trilogy by Richard Nell. Very underrated. It begins as a low fantasy, but then goes on to epic fantasy, and it of course features, and I know Steve, your team Ruka, but it features these two characters, Ruka and the other Kale, and it's kind of like a Cain versus Abel story, but the key point is Cain in this, or Abel in this, is a cannibalistic person, and he's a savant. He's intelligent. He has some sort of magical powers which he himself doesn't know, and the world is there's this epic clash, and that's how it begins. I also love Dirk Ashton's Patronus trilogy because again it is to my mind it's the only series which kind of combines all of the world's mythology, and it makes sense. He has kind of come up with a convoluted timeline, but it actually makes sense that how these different mythologies are still the same and everything. And he's kind of written this epic clash in the end with all sorts of gods and monsters and everything. He's kind of like the Tolkien of the urban fantasy world.
Yeah.
And he's written his knowledge of mythology truly worldwide is being used fantastically over there. Um, Other series which come to mind, Mark Lawrence with his Red Sister, Gray Sister, Holy Sister. I know there's his other grimdark books are bigger, but I love this series trilogy a lot. Um, and I'm gonna have to. Oh, Heartstrikers by Rachel Aaron. I don't know if you all have read it. It's like this dystopian comedy, urban fantasy, sci-fi set in like post-apocalyptic Detroit called Detroit Free Zone, and it features Mesoamerican dragons, and it is funny as hell. And she's one of my all-time favorite writers. Like I've read every book of hers. I've reviewed every book of hers, but this series is like holds a special place in my heart. And I'm pretty sure I'm forgetting a lot more series. There's one book which hasn't been published yet, but I got to read like the kind of like I beat read for the author Rob J. Hayes.
Yes.
I love his books. I
Yep.
have read
He is
all of his books,
great.
but he has not yet released this book. He calls it his Age of the God Eater trilogy. I've read the first book. It's called Herald. It's from a viewpoint of a pacifist teenage girl, but in that world, God has died because a group of kings killed God, and now they hunt God's angels. So it's kind of like this epic world where you have these angels who are being hunted by these immortal kings, and the fifth age is about to begin because this pacifist girl is who's going to be the next herald is supposed to herald the new age, but all the previous heralds were angels and this one is a human, so whose side she will take. Mind blowing. Like I have read it, I've been begging him to release that book, but I don't know, I think he's going to release it next year. I think that is going to be the book that blows everyone away. That's just to my mind, but those are some of my trilogy, the series which I love. I'm pretty sure I'm forgetting a lot more, but there's going to be more.
Here's another tough question for both of you. What are some of the most underrated or undiscovered gems you've come across?
Oh boy.
Oh,
Yeah, that's a
well,
tough
yeah.
one.
Well, I feel like I talked about some of them in my like top five. I think there's a few more I can go into. Let me actually grab one of this because this is actually sorry about that. This is actually a genre blender. Um, Winterset Hollow by Jonathan Edward Durham. It's been getting a lot of steam lately. So what it is, it's a genre blender of kind of like urban fantasy, a little bit of like folklore, and touch of horror. So imagine if your favorite childhood fables or stories, imagine they're not make believe. Imagine they're real. So you have three characters that are kind of right out of high school or college, I believe. They go to the original birthplace of Winterset Hollow, the author who wrote it, in like a kind of like an island off the coast of Seattle, I believe. And when they get there, they see this ancient house and they notice that, wow, these stories are real, and it turns everything on its head, and it'll shock you. You need to not be squeamy for some of the grimmer scenes, but if you read it, I promise you'll be mind blown. I loved it when I first read it. I'm probably going to reread it again. Can't say enough high praise for that. Another one, and excuse me for this, is right here. Lamentation by Ken Scholes.
Mhm.
This has been, I don't see anybody talk about this series at all.
Mhm.
It's a pure genre blender of science fiction and fantasy. It's very religious. And basically, it starts with like the cataclysm of a city, like a religious city, and the characters are picking up the pieces. It starts off basic, and then the more books you read, the more grim you see it. And Ken takes a lot of chances with it does some things that you're not used to seeing. So this one, I actually just got the first three physical books. I've read the series. Can't wait to get back into it. And I guess the final one I'll get into, this is one of my first reads. Actually, I have two more. This one, Seasons
Oh
of
yes,
Yes,
Abaddon.
yes, sir.
This
great
was,
book.
I think, this was a semifinalist
Yeah,
in the
SPFPO.
last
Yeah.
ones. So it's a bunch of. It takes place. There's four sections for each season: winter, fall, spring, and summer. And it's based off of the best analogy I can give for this is like all the Disney movies, how they all have like good stories and the happy endings. Have you read the fables that they're based off of? How they're not
Oh,
so happy,
Yeah.
mhm,
Yeah. Yeah.
and how
yeah,
they're grim and they're kind of like gross in some
Yeah.
areas.
yep.
That's what this is. Each
Ah,
each season is like the story goes along and it doesn't have the ending you expect, and they're linked to each other. I've never read writing like this. It's different. It's unique, and it's something you'll very much enjoy. And of course, got to give a shout out. I don't have the book on hand to Hull of Bones by Tim Hardy.
yes. Yeah.
Mm,
Epic
Yes.
fantasy,
Yes.
Nordic inspired epic fantasy, very much in the same vein of a little bit of Game of Thrones, but a lot of Robin Hobb
Yeah.
influences in that one. It was a finalist. I think I was one of the first ones to rate and review it. Can't speak enough about it. I absolutely love that book and the sequel with all my heart. So
Fantastic
definitely
stuff.
give those books a read.
all right. Well, that got me thinking. The one book which comes to my mind, and to this day I'm surprised that people haven't heard of it or picked up it, is this really small tiny book called Devil's Cave by Rob C. Rogers. I wish I had a paper copy. I do have a paper copy, I just not with me, but it is this book. The only way I can describe it is, imagine the Sopranos meets the Avengers in like a hot, sweaty Louisiana town that was founded by a pirate. And the legend is that pirate, that town, it's called Devil's Cave. It's always going to be have a criminal under mastermind who keeps on coming up, and every few decades it's somebody else. And it's this the the writing is incredible because Rob C. Rogers came out of nowhere. This is a book from the early 2000s. I happened to found it in like a used bookstore, and the cover was also not that great, but I just happened to like the blurb and I picked it up, and that book blew away my mind. It was entered in SPFP a couple of years ago. It did, because I think the author got the rights back. Unfortunately, it didn't really do well, but like to this day, I will love for people to pick that up, just because if you love crime, if you love this incredibly built city, and if you love superheroes, and if you love this characters like who are coming up, trying to fight and trying to find their origins, it's just an incredible mix. And unfortunately, I don't know why the author hasn't written the sequel, because the way the book ends, you want the next book now. The ending is worthy of like the first the ending of a Game of Thrones, like how, apologies for the spoilers, the show is out, everybody has seen what happens
Yeah.
at the end of first season of Game
Yeah.
of Thrones, but imagine that level of shock of
Wow.
when Dany does what she does. This book ends on a similar level like that, and it blows my mind. And of course, nobody has heard of it, so that is an underrated gem that I would say people need to jump on. It's on Kindle. It's available as an ebook. You can buy the paperback copy as well. Again, ignore the cover. The cover is it's bad, but the book is equally as good. As bad as the cover is, the book is that good, is all I can say for it. Recently, I came across this book. It's called Sons of Darkness.
Yeah. I've seen that.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
My
I've seen
review
that.
is going to be coming out next week. This book, I am so glad Gaurav Mohanty, he's an Indian author. He pitched it as like the India's first dark fantasy. As an Indian fan, I was super hyped for this, and I feel like this book is written with me in mind, just because again I love the Mahabharata. What this book does, it takes characters from the Mahabharata, it takes characters from like the epic Indian lore, puts them in like a Song of Ice and Fire settings, where the world has like there's different nations, there's feudal conflict and everything, but it's purely based from the character viewpoint, and then it has the really dark stuff going on. If you love Mao Zedong, it will give you the similar feeling that you are placed in this world. You kind of are, it doesn't make sense because of course I don't expect Western readers to know everything about Indian or Hindu mythology or the characters' names, but the writer has made it very accessible. Thank God for that, because not everybody can be as good as Steven Erickson. And this book and this cover and everything is just amazing. I'm also running this. This is actually the copy I'm going to be giving away as a in a giveaway next week as well, just because I love this book and I want more people to grab hold of it. And this is not an underrated gem, but like I love the Stardust Thief. Chelsea Abdullah needs to be celebrated for writing such a fun sword and sorcery book, set in like Middle Eastern Arabic settings. It is I loved it. I cannot speak. I wish to review it. I'll hopefully review it, but some of my other co-bloggers have reviewed it. It's lovely. And any other underrated gem that I can think of? Oh dear God, I'm gonna kill myself later on because I forgot some more. The Mortal Technique series by Rob J. Hayes, featuring
yes.
Never Die, Pawns Gambit, and Spirits of Vengeance. If you love if you love sword and sorcery, but set in an Asian world with with not ninjas but like samurai settings called Shinte in his world, with featuring really cool Chinese and Japanese mythological creatures and everything, with slight touches of horror, but it's heroic fantasy, and each book is a standalone. I know I have those books up. I wish I had the copies down here, but I should have. But those books, yes, those are again not as popular as they should be because they are so fantastic. And I hope he writes more because I want more books in that setting.
Wow, those are some great under the radar. Some of them I've heard of, some of them I completely haven't. And I've read Spirits of Vengeance. I can't comment it. It's currently an SPFPO. I can't comment, but I have read it. So.
Oh wow! Oh yeah, right. That's right. You're part of Bets before we go block for SPFPO.
Yeah,
well, I'm so excited to see what you think of it whenever you think release it.
I have read it. Sorry, I'll let Steve read out the questions that are going on here.
Shah just says, Mihir, I've been reading your reviews for a long time, since 2013 or 14. You got me into quite a few series back before BookTube was big. I want to thank you.
Shad, I remember you. You were one of the first people who commented on the Goodreads reviews of mine. So, hello.
Yeah.
Patroness is amazing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, Heartstrikers. Some love for Heartstrikers.
Awesome.
How did you ties that bind trilogy by Rob J. Hayes?
How did you?
How did you like? I think.
Oh, I loved it. That was the first series. The story. There's quite a story behind it. Like during that time, this was in 2013 when Rob had released the books. I did not know him, but my father was had cancer at that time.
Oh, sorry.
And I was in a 6-month reading funk. Like I could not focus. If I picked any book up, I would read a page or two and then just put it down because my mind was not in the right place. And again, in one of those nights when I was sitting with my father, he's getting treatments, he's in the ICU, he was unconscious. So I was to just sit with him and help him if he would awaken. And I was surfing on Amazon and I come across a book with a really horrible cover. And I truly mean this because I love Rob J. Hayes. If you look up his original covers for the Ties That Bind trilogy, his debut trilogy, and he'll be the first person to admit it, they were, for a lack of a better word, not that good. And I just happened to find this book on Amazon and I liked the blurb. It was for 99 cents. I just bought it. I'm like, what the hell? I'll just try it. I started reading at night. I thought I'll read a few pages and then I'll see. I could not stop I could not stop reading. I finished the entire book in that night. The next 2 books were also available. I bought them, The Color of Vengeance, The Price of Faith. I finished them over the weekend. And I was like, who is this guy? I had not heard of, this was back in 2013. Ebooks weren't as popular, but they were kind of coming up. Indie publishing was also not that popular, but you had a few gems here and there, like Anthony Ryan, David Dalglish. And I had not heard of this guy. So I looked him up. He was this British dude on this website. I contacted him over email, like, hey, can I interview you? And he was very kind enough to, to talk to me, and I interviewed him. And since that day, I became like an Rob J. Hayes fan, and he hasn't disappointed. Ties That Bind, the duology, the pirate duology, which came after that. I'm forgetting the title of it, The Bound something. Then he releases City of Kings, which is the standalone. He's released I get to show off the War Eternal trilogy books. I don't know if you all love this, but recently he's released these gorgeous hardcovers of the War Eternal trilogy. So gorgeous, with Felix Ortiz and Sean T.K. And the Mortal Techniques and everything. I am a Rob J. Hayes fan for life because he rescued me from the mental dump in that time, and he has never disappointed me. So that's how I found Rob J. Hayes. Shad.
That's an amazing story. Thanks so much for sharing here. That's amazing. That touches my heart. That's an amazing story. Steve, I think, and again, for the 3 of you, I came to blogging after writing, and for the 3 of you, you've been doing this stuff prior to, I'm not sure if, in three you're going to write someday. I have hopes and some guesses that maybe some of you will, but you know, and I'd love to read that. But I guess I have a question for three of you about blogging and about you know, what you do and how. I mean, I've always said, and I'm sure most writers feel this way, that bloggers, YouTubers, that you folks are the unsung heroes of the writing community because, you know, number one, most people don't get paid. Steve put up a great video on monetization as a YouTuber. I recommend you check it out if you haven't seen it. You know, for a lot of bloggers, it's for free. You're investing time and money, especially if you have a YouTube channel, whether you do it only through written form. Like, it's one of those things that definitely has to be a labor of love. Like, but again, without people getting the word out about our books, especially for indie authors, you know, a lot of us wouldn't be as successful as we are. So, you know, what do you see your role is as a blogger, as a YouTuber, for all three? Like, what, you know, what makes you do this? Like, what, besides your love of books, like, what role do you feel you serve in what you do, and why do you do it?
So I guess I'll start off. I've been blogging for about 2 years, and it happened right smack in the middle of the pandemic when I was at home working remotely. Didn't do anything different besides work, wake up, work. The only time I left the house was to go get the mail. And I needed an outlet after doing this for 6 months. So I looked up how to start doing blogging. I used WordPress, I did all the research, and I asked some people for help. And they said, yeah, you should definitely do this. The reason I wanted to do it is because at least back then, like in the early, I think 2010s and going up to when I started doing this, I noticed that there was so many great series out there that were not getting noticed or were not getting notoriety that they deserved. So that's that. And then I actually Googled the blog names, like, is there under the radar SFF books? Is this taken? And to my shock and surprise, it wasn't. So I saw that as I wanted to tackle like a niche in the book blogging community of giving like a boost and love to authors, wherever they are, whoever they may be, whatever their background was. It doesn't matter to me. If the book is fantastic and I love the characters and I love the plot, I'm going to promote it. It doesn't matter to me like how popular you are, how unpopular you are. And that's why I do it. I don't do it for, I don't get paid. I don't do it for the ARCs or sometimes authors send me books. I don't do it for that. I do it to give back, because my whole life I've always wanted, if someone gave me like a little boost or helped me out, I always try to repay the favor. And I wanted to do something for people who may not have either the resources or the marketing team or the notoriety to get their work out there. I never expected it to take off to where it has. I never expected like people reading my reviews that I would be like popular or anything. That's not what I do it for. I do it out of care and love. It's a labor of love thing, and that's what I do. And I recently started a podcast, which I believe has done pretty well. I need to get back onto that. And I'm sorry for those listeners of mine who I haven't released one in like a couple of months, but I'm definitely going to get back on that. I promise.
Steve, you're up next.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just well, I don't do half the work that these two gentlemen do, but I just wanted someone to talk to about books, and I've always been a fan of indie books. I used to read a lot of indie comics, like horror comics, or you know, like the non-superhero stuff, not the capes and tights kind of thing, but more of the crime noir stuff. So when I started reading novels, I wanted to read indie books because that's just what I enjoy. Kind of I like to find those things that most people don't know about. So when they are popular, I can say, "Oh, I read that. I've read that," and I just wanted someone to talk to, and I felt like there's a great book community that I wanted to be a part of, and it's been quite an experience.
All right. Well, echoing what Steve and Blaise said, similar to both of them, I was growing up in India, and it seemed like I was the only person trying to read books whom nobody knew about. I had one friend of mine, and we were the only both geeks who would be talking about the same book. So when I emigrated to the US, I was so glad to be able to find books, or at least bookstores where I could buy books easily, because shipping to India was impossible. Or I would just tell my mom to get them from the library, and if I would make the trip, I would read them. I Similar to what Blaise said, for me it was more of like I needed an outlet to talk to people, or at least to say, read this book. This is fantastic, because that's one of the things which I feel that I'm good at. Like I can recognize this book is good versus this book is perhaps not as good, or it's not meant for me. And it's just this urge of wanting to tell, or at least telling other, or connecting with other people and say, hey, look, there's this really good book, read it. And of course, everybody reads the popular books, but nobody reads the ones which are like perhaps fall under the radar. Like Blaise mentioned, there's oftentimes it depends on luck of the draw. Even with publishers, like some people get picked up and they get promoted really well, and it helps them. But there are some books which are so great, but then they're not promoted, and they just fall off the radar. Doubly so for indie books, because indie authors are doing so much on their own. They have to they have to get their cover art, they have to do their own manuscript, they have to upload it into Amazon, then they have to do publicity. And of course, a lot of blogs, when we were starting out, I remember they would not even touch indie books with like a 10-foot pole. Not to toot FBC's horns, we did look at some indie books, and that's how we discussed some few authors. But we always felt like that okay, it doesn't matter if the book is well written, we will give it a shot, ignoring the cover. Of course, that's how we discovered many more gems as well. And so for me, it's like that. I wish to be able to talk to books. Keeping reading and writing reviews keeps me sane. Um, it's like a healthy outlet for me. Like it gives the energy me a place to go, and I can then talk to wonderful people like you. That's how I got introduced to Steve, because I was not into books, the booktube community. I did not know anybody. Steve was the first person whom I reached out to me, and that's thanks to him and following all the people he interviews, I've got introduced to many more book reviewers and booktubers whom I follow on as well. So it's been cool, and it's been a lot of fun.
Nice. And Blaise, I wondered, starting under the radar SSF books, was it hard to get that started, to get some traction, because there's so many people looking for reviews of the popular books? How did you gain traction for the under the radar books that you wanted to help put a spotlight on?
So going into blogging, this is my mindset. Just don't, when writing reviews and thinking if you want to do it, don't write the reviews you think people want to read. Write the reviews you want to read yourself, because there's 1,000 blogs out there and there's 1,000 different people who review books. How do you cut through like all the noise and everything? You got to be true to yourself, because if you're not true to yourself and what you want to read and what you like to read, you're not good to anybody. So when I first started, the first book I read, and I'm going back, this is a series that has not gotten a lot of traction. It was actually the Six Gun Tarot by R.S. Belcher.
Mhm.
It's a weird Western story. It's just fantastic. There's several different viewpoints. Each viewpoint has a secret. Some of them you find out, some of them you don't find out. It's just brilliantly done. So what I did was I wrote the review, posted on my blog, started a Twitter account, posted the review on it, tagged the author, and then away you go. And if the author likes it, he'll comment on it, he'll retweet it, and that's slowly how you're going to start to grow your platform. And there's some reviewers who I follow, they kind of get frustrated when sometimes you post something and no one comments on it. It's like into the ether and no one is paying attention. It can get depressing. Just know there's always somebody reading. There's always somebody watching. Just keep doing what you're doing. You're doing a great job, and good things are going to happen. It just takes time. I never thought I would grow this fast at all. I think it was just luck of the draw, but we're always here to support each other. And if you need any information, feel free to reach out to me. Happy to help.
What about you, Mihir? Did you have any trouble? How do you gain traction for these books that kind of lesser known books that you're writing reviews for?
Honestly, I'm I wish I was as popular, or I wish Fantasy Book Critic was as popular as some of the bigger YouTubers like Daniel B. Green or Petrick Leo. But again, similar to what Blaise's point, I don't know how much. I mean, we can see we are getting hits per day or something like that. We hope that those people read those reviews and pick it up. I'm the worst person to talk to this because I'm very lazy. I I do not do I wish I was I wish I could say that there is one perfect method of like making sure that your blog becomes popular or something like that. But similar to what Blaise said, I can only chime in with that and say like keep doing, like, just try to write a good review, try to highlight why this book made it exciting for you, or what you loved about this book. Even if one person picks it up, that's a win, because that's a win for the author. Like, that author was, you helped find somebody, connect with that book because that author has taken the time to write such a good book, and you are able to connect it to somebody else. Hopefully, when you're on Twitter or on Facebook or Discord and whoever else, you can convince other people without shouting at them. You can just say, hey, here's why I love this book. Check it out. Maybe you'll like it. And if enough people like it, then other bigger bloggers or other bigger YouTubers can get attracted to it, and then they will publicize it, because that's a win too. If you can attract the attention of somebody big who will then pick that up and say, hey, I found this, I love this, that's a win for the author. It might not look for a win for you, but that's a win for the author, and that's what you're here for. So I guess I look at it that way.
Yeah, I definitely want to commend you all for what you do, and it's fantastic. And I don't know if you all realize, and I say this to Steve all the time, I haven't had the pleasure to say it to Mihir, because I have followed a lot of his reviews, and of course Blaise, who again, along with Steve, I have so much gratitude for what they've personally done to promote my work. So I want to thank you guys for what you do for the writing community. It is sometimes very, like I said, it's unsung, tough sledding, but I also I don't know if you all realize how influential you've all become, because for me, from the outside looking in, I see the credibility that you bring to work, and I see the way people look to you. I mean, you can tell by the questions, people looking to you as authorities, and I guess now that I'm on the blogging side, I'm understanding more about that and what that means, and the responsibility that you carry in terms of people do look to you as someone giving an opinion that they're hoping they can trust. And as I always say, and I know you three are all the same way. You do your best to emphasize and highlight the positives of a book as much as you can. And then so there's a disproportionate balance between the positives are like this and the negatives like this, even if the book didn't work for you, right? So but I know you all take your jobs, your passions, not your job, you pay for it very seriously. And I do want to thank you on behalf of writers, because I wear the two hats, but my writing half thanks you all so much for what you do. And like I said, I mean, Blaise, I'm taking this opportunity to embarrass you, say thank you so much for I know that you were somebody who took an interest in my work, and helped get it, spread the word out there, and it's meant so much to me. It's really made a difference in terms of my readership. So thank you for doing that.
You're very welcome. Your series everyone should read your series. It's that good. It was a throwback to old classical fantasy and the writing style, and then it's turning into an epic of its own. So I can't wait for book 3. I know you have it. You're itching to get that out, so I'll keep pestering you about that.
Well, I think as planned from last time, you'll be doing the release, the initial release, as we did last time with Legends, so Lord and King. So I'm excited too. I'm working hard. It'll be out around the same time. So
lovely.
Sorry.
Paul, if I may interject. You have a 90-book series plan, right? I remember hearing one of your interviews in the start, like you have this massive plan, right?
Oh, I'm honored. 20 books, yeah.
20 books. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, but not 20. So 7 books in initial series, 2 separate prequel trilogies, and then another 7 books. So, I wouldn't subject you to just 20 books.
We are all epic fantasy fans. Like, we love big books. We don't have to apologize for it. So it's great.
Very ambitious. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, like I said, if I live long enough, you'll get all 20 books, and hopefully, someone will read them, right? So, sorry, let Steve get to the question there.
Oh, no, it's okay. Shot says another underrated series that is really good if you enjoy First Law and Grimdark is the Grim Company series by Luke Skull. Have you guys heard of it?
I've heard of it.
Yep, I read it as well. All the entire 3 books are amazing. It's got shades of like Joe Abercrombie, like especially the first book. It's kind of like there's one character who's kind of literally reminds us, of Blotka,
Which is my favorite
Yes.
characters ever. One of them.
Yes, and the beauty is, though, the Grim Company begins out as like this. It's got shades of David Gemmell, because one character is this incredible warrior who's old, and of course he has a fellow warrior with him who's taciturn and who has these twin axes and everything. And it begins out as it's kind of like a combination of that, and it goes into high fantasy mode by the second and third book, and then the third book has like this incredible ending where I don't want to spoil it. It goes beyond fantasy is all I'll say. It's a highly underrated series. Unfortunately, the author had some mental health issues, which is why he could not, come out with like the sequel books, because I believe he had 2 sequel books, like standalone sequel books planned in the world. But I believe he's working on it. He's, Luke Skull is on Twitter. He's on Facebook. He posts on the Fantasy Faction Facebook group as well, or the Grimdark Fiction Readers group Facebook group. And I believe he's working on something. He'll come out whenever it does, but whenever it does, he's an author to watch out for. Like, if you haven't read the Grim Company, it is, if you love Joe Abercrombie, if you love David Gemmell, if you love fast-paced action and like an incredible world with lots of cool dialogue and cool characters and unpredictable plot twist, it is a trilogy, and it's complete. It's a trilogy that is complete as well. So again, for those readers who wish for completed books, it should not be the case, but still.
What about you, Blaise? Have you read that? The Grim Company?
I've read The Grim Company, but that was I think it was 4, 5, or 6 years ago, and I thought it was good. I haven't picked up the sequels yet, but I probably would want to reread the first book anyway. I have it. It's at my parents' house, so looking forward to picking that back up and continuing. But it's been a minute since I've read it.
Yeah. I want to ask you guys. And I know this is maybe a more complex question. So, for example, for me, I one of the beauties of being part of Before We Go blog, and Beth is amazing. Big shout out to Beth Talbot, Before We Go blog. She's an incredible leader. Steve and I are both members of Before We Go, and she's fantastic. She does give us a lot of freedom to read what we like to read. What guides your TBR choices here and Blaise? Like what, in some cases, again, if you're judging for SPFEO, which I know you've both done, of course, it's because, it's part of a mandatory reading because you're giving feedback to decide whether or not books move on to competition. But what in general drives your reading choices? Is it more mood? If you're a mood reader, is it certain books you feel you have to read to feel well read in fantasy? We've grappled with this question before on previous page chewing episodes, especially with bloggers. Like, do you feel there's these gatekeeper type series that you feel you have to read, like the Malazans, and like if you don't read it, you're not as well read as you should be. Like, what guides your reading, your TBR choices?
So I'm 100% a mood TBR reader. So I have my list of books I need to get through, and I'll pick up the first one. I'll read the first chapter, and I'm like, nope, not gonna work, not right now. So I pick up the next one. This is actually what I'm reading currently, Misfit Soldier. It's very, very, very fun. It's kind of like it's a sci-fi soldier story about, but in the same vein as like Ocean's 11. The guy's a con artist, so it's like a light, fun type read, and that's what I need to read now. I'm in the mood for after just finishing The Right House Chasm, which is very dense and very emotional, and I need to do something different from what I just read in order to get back to the groove. Because if I read the same thing over and over and over again, like if I read the full Malazan book one after another, I'd be in a very dark place. I can't do that to myself. I know what I need to get back. So I'm 100% a mood reader.
Steve, what about you?
Well, for me, I prioritize my group reads. So whenever I'm reading with a group, I prioritize those first, and then I'm trying to get better about committing to less of those, and just because I was struggling to keep up with so many, because it's fun, but it's hard to keep up with so many group reads and schedules and meetups, and while it's a lot of fun, it can get overwhelming. So I'm trying to pace myself, and between that, I've just been trying to mood read, which is weird for me because I'm usually not a mood reader. I'd like to plan everything out, but I've just been like, I'm gonna get this book off my shelf that's been sitting there for 6 months. That's been pretty fun. So I'm trying to be better about that.
Paul? you should answer this question as well, because you've been asking us all these interesting questions, but you haven't been talking.
Oh, no, not at all. I talk too much, I think. Unfortunately, I'm an extreme planner. I do allow more mood reading in my schedule now that I'm getting older, and I feel that that's important because you want to be able to, you don't want to have regrets in life. You want to be able to sit back and say, you know what, I read the books I want to read, right? That said, what I do is I set up theme months. So each month, I plan out the year and what I plan to read in general in this month, leaving some latitude, some room for some changes in general, but within still in the scope of that particular theme. So, for example, January might be classic fantasy. So, any fantasy is written 20 years ago. So from that, I think I have a wide range. I can pick some things that I like that, fall into that category. It's things like February, Ben Literature Lo-Fi,
Yep.
fantastic fella, and wishing him all the best. He inspired me, for example, to get into the February she wrote, stuff where you read to dedicate to the month reading authors that identify the pronouns she, her. So that was great. That really was fantastic to do, like to specifically devote a month to doing that, because there's so many amazing authors that fall into that category, and that was great. I might have a month for debut fantasy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have these theme months, so I have the latitude to choose books within that category. It kind of helps shape my reading, but yet I can still read books that kind of interest my TBR. But mostly, I am a planner. I do plan out my reads for the most part.
See, that's pretty cool. I wish I could do that. For me, it's like it's mostly like it's a combination of three things. One, SPFPO, because I've been taking part in it since the start, so it's become like a thing on the calendar. So I 1/3 of my time is dedicated to SPFPO books. I'm partly also partial to the authors that I love. So if I know if a book is coming out by Turk Ashton, Richard Nell, Rachel Aaron, John Connolly, Rob J. Hayes, David Dalglish, I'm going to kill myself if I keep on forgetting authors. Jeffrey Deaver. I also read a lot in the mystery thriller genre. So Jeffrey Deaver, Douglas Preston Lincoln Child, anything like that. So if they come up with books, I'm going to jump on those because they have wowed me in the past. I know that they will deliver. Alec Hudson as well. And then besides that, there is also newer books, because of course traditional publishing is coming out, and then indie publishing has boomed. So you often find the craziest of books, which are like so incredible that you have to read them. And so it's like a mix of those. The pandemic turned me a little bit of a mood read eater, because then I could not read new books. I just went to my old classics and I used to reread them. But now I realize that I can't keep on rereading books, because then I won't read new books. So it's like this. I wish I was, and I know Literature Lo-Fi, Benjamin did that, February she wrote. I wish I had more time, because then I could devote, and I know there's like self-published August or something like that's coming up. So I wish I could do that. Yeah, Indie August, thank you. But I just find it so hard in between, SPFPO, the other books that I have to read. And which is why I'm so glad that we have new blog members, because then I can be like, okay, yes, here's these incredible people blog.
Give it to the newbies.
Yeah, well, they are incredible, because there's and of course we have. I love him, Lucas, because he's a reading machine, and he'll read so diversely. So Lucas is kind of the driving force behind Fantasy Book Critic. There's Caitlin, who also posts her stuff. Now we have Shermani, we have Matthew Higgins, we have Daniel, and we have V. So I can be like, okay, now there's like no mental pressure for me, to be like, I have to read this, because I know somebody else will, and I can just pick up here and there, and I can do like dual reviews and stuff like that. So it's good, and I just wish I was better at it. So I keep on looking up to Steve, and now thankfully Blaise as well, and lots of the other bloggers that I follow, to kind of be like, okay, if they have picked something up, it's interesting, I'll go forward with that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I feel like, and now too, and I've talked about this, like, you all influence my reading taste. Like, I'll see Mihir review something, or Blaise or Steve puts on the channel, and be like, oh, like I said, the peer pressure is like if they like, I have to check it out, right? And I find that more and more from what I'm seeing of the writing community, that bloggers, YouTubers, starting to influence reading choices more and more. And I think a byproduct of the pandemic too, like you said, people were shut inside. I know, Blaise, that's how you said you kind of got started. That's how a lot of bloggers, when Steve and I talked to Zara and Angie, Bookaholic Brown Nymph, it was the same thing. That's kind of what got their start. And I've heard so many bloggers say that that's when they got started. It was the pandemic, right? And being cooped up inside and feeling the need to connect and express themselves. And but what I'm saying is, these, I feel now that, again, you get some of the bigger bloggers, the Daniel Greens that Mihir mentioned, the Patrick, they review your book and they like it, and suddenly, it can make or break your career, right? So, and what you have to realize is that, you three gentlemen are ascending to that level as well, and you don't realize it because, we're never really aware of how potentially influential we are in terms of, what our word means when we put our name behind a book. So, but I do feel that, the one phenomenon I've seen a lot from blogging now is that, self-published books, and specifically, they are the ones that are, really seeping their way into the blogs and the YouTubes of YouTubers blogs who'd never read it before. So now they're starting to slowly take over, a good portion of the TBRs. And can you guys, for Steve, Mihir, and Blaise, can you explain the phenomenon of what's going on with the book industry right now, and publishing and reading with self-published versus traditionally published book, like as fantasy, like what's going on here, right? Like, how do we sort through this?
So, from my perspective, it's at least back when I first started getting into reading, which was like early 2010, 2011, I noticed that the big sites and like the YouTubers, they were promoting and reviewing the popular stuff more or less. And that's because that's what people were reading. That's what people want to get reviews about. That's what they want to talk about. And that's all good. I love popular series. I will always be a fan of like John Gwen, Joe Abercrombie, Brandon Sanderson. The list goes on and on. You can name it. I wanted to leave that to those guys who wanted to review those types of books. What became popular was the SBF, Mark Lawrence indie publishing review. That became popular, and it's so popular to the point where people can't ignore it anymore, and they want to be part of this. They want to be part of the big. Okay, who's the finalist? Okay, what is great about this story that I need to read about? And you see it now. Legacy of the Brightwash is getting a lot of popularity. All like the winners of the previous contests are like on Daniel Green's YouTube channel, and all the big sites, they're picking them up, including authors who I loved growing up that have not gotten the popularity they deserve are now getting that. Back when I started reading, John Gwen was not a popular author. He didn't start getting popular until like 2017, 2018. And then it started to click. And I'm like, you guys are way behind the curve with John Gwen in this series. I feel like I always wanted to promote indie books because those are stories that I grew up loving, and these are the authors who all authors work their tail off, but these are the ones who they don't have like the big backers, they don't have the big marketing deals, they don't have like a PR team to boost everything like Brandon Sanderson does. So little thing I can do to help is warranted, and that's what I want to do. And it's just giving back, like I said. And we want to talk about the books that we love, and the fact that we love them and the big timers are reviewing them as well just makes me feel good. And like, I want to find the next hidden gem, and then I want to see that take off. That's what I love doing. It's challenging, but it's what I signed up for.
Steve, want to go next? Oh, you're so kind, Steve. I'm going to say, well, looking back, that's a very interesting question, Paul, because, looking back at what, where indie, like traditional publishing is and where indie publishing is, it's like a very fascinating divide. Someone had brought it up. I don't know if it was on with you both, you guys, or somebody else. Like somebody had mentioned in one of the, video interviews that I was hearing that they had asked an agent, do you know what progression fantasy is? And the agent was just clueless, like what progression fantasy is. We all know progression fantasy and lit RPG are racing up the charts on Amazon. The one thing indie publishing does, I believe, is that it offers a diversity of book content in genre, in author type, in writing, you name it, it's there. Like there's always some kind of content which is available to the public. Thanks to Amazon's, Kindle store, again, not giving it too much glory, but it is what it is. It has led people to be able to publish what they want. Previously, like say 7 years ago, this was not available. You of course had the gatekeepers in traditional publishing, and even right now, traditional publishing is trying to kind of branch out. With thanks to Orbit Books, thanks to Tor Books, they're giving us different types of content, but it is still not enough. The diversity of thoughts and writing styles to be found in indie publishing, it's infinite, and I believe that is really helpful because it's driving readers who want to pick up, like Will White. Let's take the example of Will White. Will White is possibly the most famous author that almost all traditional publishing readers have never heard of. But he's huge. He outsold almost everybody when he got like his book, which I think the ninth or eighth book in the series, which was the most downloaded, most bought book on Amazon. And again, if you go to any traditional bookstore, you will not see his books. And of course you have his his recent Kickstarter, which became so successful. Yes, of course, Brandon Sanderson's Kickstarter overtook the news. I had people who had not read books messaging me, "Do you know this guy?" I'm like, "Yes, I know this guy. You're late to the game. Let it be." But it's this thing, at least I think like nowadays, thanks to, and of course a big shout out to Mark Lawrence when he began the self-published fantasy blog of SPFPO in 2015. There were not that many blogs or even people who knew about what self-publishing was. He took it on the fact that he wanted to promote indie books. He did not have any books to do of his own, but he still took that on. And 10 bloggers came together. We had like over, I think, 250 books in the first time, and since then it has grown. Thanks to it, we have such gems such as Sword of Kaiken, which ML Wong has written. Incredible book. It has come up thanks to that. We have Crystal Matar's Brightwash. We have, and again, why am I forgetting the winners of all of these? We have Zach. We have Orconomics, thanks to Orconomics by J. Zachary Pike. We have Senlin Essence. There are so many books that have come across, that have been picked up by, indie by traditional publishing. And I want to give a special shout out to Orbit Books for picking up, James Islington's The Shadow, which came before. That was in the first SPFPO. Not a lot of people know that. It got cut because, of course, the eventual winner was chosen by that same blog. But that got picked up by Orbit Books. There have been so many other titles, which have been picked up by other traditional publishing. I'm just glad we live in this era where we can now look at, traditional publishing. We can find good stuff over there. Indie publishing, there's incredible stuff over here. And people, Paul, like yourself, you have this incredible plan. If you maybe 10 years ago, if you had approached like maybe a literary agent, somebody would have picked you up, but maybe most would be like, no, you're an unknown author, we don't want to. But now at least indie publishing offers you the chance to come out with your own books at your own speed and find your own readers. So I believe we are all blessed to be in this regards.
Agreed. I just want to give one shout out since we're on the subject of moving to traditional publishing. I want to give a shout out to another indie book that just got a deal. The Combat Codes by Alexander Darwin.
Yes.
I read that series when it first came out. Alexander was kind enough to give me the ARCs, and it was just picked up. And it's actually going to be expanded from what he actually wrote and add more material. So I'm very much looking forward for those. It's a combat style science fiction type story where the kingdoms fight with just one person, mano a mano, to determine like the outcome of a trilogy. It's very, really eye-opening. It's brilliant. I love that series.
Yeah, know you like your one-on-one fights there, Blaise. I know you like your mano or woman to woman. Interesting to hear Mihir's perspective, especially because Mihir has been doing it for so long, been involved with SBF from the beginning, and yeah, it really has become. Steve and I talked about this in the past, and Steve's had Jonathan French one of my interviews. Jonathan French, his Lotlands just got picked up. Justin Lee Anderson recently, I think it was the year before he got picked up. Josiah Bancroft with his, like I think Mihir mentioned that. Devin Madsen with her White Storm series. Like the list goes on and on of all these SBFPO, stars that went on to, become, get trad deals. It's just, it's almost, and I know Mark emphasizes that trad isn't the be all end all, and you shouldn't be looking at SBFPO to get a book deal. However, it doesn't hurt your chances, right?
Right.
So, but yeah, I want to hear from Steve what he thinks about this whole self-published, traditionally published, where we're going, what's going on,
I think we've talked about a previous. I don't know if it was on during the episode or after PL, but we had talked about the book industry reminds me of the music industry in the late '90s, early 2000s when digital was starting to kind of take over, and the music industry was so stuck in their ways and didn't want to move along with the times. And I think the publishing, the big publishers now are they're just like big, slow, lumbering idiots, and they move too slow. And with self publishing, you can do whatever you want to do, pump out your books and get them out there for everyone. And where if you were in a pub, getting it with a major publisher, it might take years for your book to get on the shelves. So no matter what you're into as a reader, you can find something that you'll enjoy in indie publishing. There's something for everybody. So if you aren't enjoying what you're reading, you can find something that will fit your tastes that you'll enjoy because there's just so much. There's just so much out there, and I love that it's the way that the creator intended it to be, and not the way
Mhm.
that five different editors changed it, and it ends up being this weird watered down version of what was originally thought of. I like it from whether it's a success or a failure, it's what the creator wanted, and that's what I want, that unfiltered view into
Mhm.
what they wanted to create, and that's something to celebrate that they can create something and get it out to us. And I think part of it we talked a little bit about getting traction, getting eyes on these books. I think more people. I think sometimes some people shy away, like creators shy away from indie because they're not as popular. So you don't get as many views, you don't get as many, as much traction, whether it's a blog or a YouTube channel or whatever, or podcast, because there's not as many people looking for something like Books of Babel than there is like Brandon Sanderson books. So if you have a channel that you devote to Brandon Sanderson, you're going to have thousands of subscribers and thousands of views right away. So it's a whole different mindset. You just have to be, because I make content with stuff I'm passionate about. And I'm not a, I'm, these are the things that I enjoy reading. So I want to share it. And I'm just not going to, talk about things that I'm not passionate about just for the sake of getting traction. For anyone out there who's worried about that, just make things that you're passionate about, and it'll, like Blaise had mentioned, it'll get some movement and things will start happening for you. And PL, the authors, whenever the authors retweet things like an article or a video or whatever, that's huge. That makes a huge difference. So I want to thank you for doing that because you're really good about promoting stuff that other people do, and that makes a huge, huge difference.
Thank you. It's my honor, and as Blaise said, it's all about giving back. And I still look at myself as very much a nobody in the book community. But then you don't realize, again, and I keep saying this, you don't realize how much of a somebody you are to someone else, right? And if I can do something I love seeing people shoot past me and far exceed me in sales and recognition, all that, and that makes me feel good, especially when, like Blaise said, it was a book that an author or a booktuber that I was really, you gotta watch these guys, you gotta watch the reviews, or you gotta read this book, this is amazing, and that's what gets me psyched, because I have my audience and hopefully it will grow. So and there's room enough in amongst all the reviewers and all the booktubers and all the authors for us all to have our audience, and we're not competing each other. We're there to help each other and boost each other up. There's people that we all there's enough room in the pie, enough slice of the pie for all of us, right? So oh my gosh, Dejera, I'm honored that you're putting ADK on the TBR. So it is available in ebook. So thank you. Yeah, it is. So thank you. I'm honored. Thank you. That means a lot. So
Just a quick thing, and thanks for the shout out to Blaise for mentioning the combat codes. That was Fantasy Book Critics finalist in that year of
Oh, wow.
SPFPO.
I didn't know
So
that.
yeah, we loved Alexander Darwin, so we were super glad when he got picked up. And I'm hoping that he gets to publish all that he wants with Orbit Books as well. Because yeah, Blaise, you're right, he has plans for like the trilogy, the expanded world, and more. So it's going to be amazing for him.
yeah, I say again, and Mihir, you have a really unique perspective, as I know, because you've been doing it for a long time. You've seen this. The current iteration of SPFO it seems like it's light years from even the first one, when it's just so hyped now. Like literally, the hype around this contest is just unreal. It just seems like all the eyes of certainly the self-published fantasy community are lasered in on SPFBO when it comes out, and it's basically now it's the point where, okay, it's a year-long contest. The hype is like this to get to the finals, and then then the hype was like this, and then suddenly when it's over, it starts all over again.
Yep.
Like it's just it's a crazy phenomenon, right? But it's really done a lot, I think, to really bring a real sense of excitement to, and as Mihir said, if nothing else, you can plan your reading calendar around that. If you just read SBFPO books, I'm not just saying finalists, but if you looked at the 300 titles, you browsed like, oh, that piques my interest, and you pick 5, 10, 15, 20, and 30, you just read that all year, you'd probably be satisfied with your reading because you'd have so many diverse books and just some amazing books, right? So one thing I did want to ask here in Blaise specifically, because now with what you do with blogging and again, I'm not sure if you guys, I know Blaise, you have a busy career otherwise. Here I'm sure you do too, or if you don't, like, how do you devote the time you want to devote to this endeavor, balancing that with everything else you do? And does it bleed into your life? Like, I know for me, I'm blessed because my beautiful wife, she's like my business partner and manager and all this. So she's brilliant with marketing. She does a lot of marketing stuff. And, but of course, like not everybody has a spouse or family that's involved in book stuff, but how do you manage the time, and does it bleed into your personal life, and everything else that you're doing, like other hobbies, like how do you guys find that as bloggers?
So I'm just like you, Paul. I'm a big planner. So whenever I have something like this live stream, for example, I knew well in advance, and I put it on. We share a Google Calendar. I put it on the calendar saying this time, this hour span or whatever it is, like that time's like blocked out. I know what I need to do. And then everything else, like reading during the week, I read just while my wife might be watching TV. I'm reading or listening to audiobooks, and then just writing a blog post. If I don't write it within like a 1 to 2 day span, I'm going to forget some things. So I'll just write it when I have spare time. I woke up this morning and I wrote a review of To Ride Hell's Chasm. It's fitting in when you have spare time, and if there's like family events or stuff you need to do, you put it aside, because at the end of the day, this is a hobby. It's not a job. My family is my life, and I would die for them. They're most important to me. So sometimes it bleeds over, and my wife gives me like a little nudge, like, "What are you doing? It's just books." I'm like, I know. I just can't. I want to read this chapter. Just and late at night is like, just one more chapter. Which are Blaise, turn off the light, go to bed. Okay, I'll do that. So yeah, just budgeting the time and reading when you have spare time.
Similar to what Blaise said, I also have 2 young kids, and thanks to my wife, because for this thing, she's taking care of them right now. And so literally when we finish, I'm going to jump up because I have to go get them, lunch and everything. So it's tricky, with the job, and this is like an unpaid job. We love to do it. That's why we do it. But there's, Paul, both you and Steven talked about this. There's no recognition of sorts. Nobody's paying us. We don't have any, links, affiliate links, and that, so that, we don't get any money or anything like that. It's completely purely voluntary. You do it because you love it, and, it keeps you sane, or at least in my view, it keeps me sane. It's tricky because, especially when you have families, when you have, your spouse expects some time for, with them. If you have kids, then your kids are obviously going to expect time with them. And then of course, if you have a job, then it's like the holy trifecta of adulthood. You're going to be busy. It's tricky. It is tricky, and everybody has their own. There's no one perfect way, because I'm amazed at like what you folks do. Both you, Paul, and Steve, you guys are doing this so organically, but at a fixed schedule. You do these talks with people, you do these interviews as well. You have a schedule which works for you, which probably might not work for me or Blaise, but then the schedule which Blaise and I have might not work for you all as well. So I think it's just figuring out your own speed. There is no contest. You don't have to be the blog that posts a review every day. You can be the blogger who posts a review once a week, once every 3 weeks, once a month, if that works for you. Do it at your own pace and do it, that makes you happy. I'm sure, yes, there's going to be moments of frustration when you're like, I wish I had posted this review because somebody else said it. Now everybody's raving about that. There's always going to be that. I have suffered from that for the last 10 years. I have finally made my peace with it, that I'm not going to be able to post reviews in a manner that would benefit the author, but at least I can post a review when I can, and I'll do my bit to help if the book is that good, or if the author is that wonderful. Yes, some nights you just, there are some nights where I'll just be like, after the kids are asleep, I'm going to be reading, or I'm going to be writing my review and posting the review at like 12 o'clock at midnight so that it can be posted. It is what it is. I wish there was a better method. I do not have the answer. After the birth of my kids, it's been harder and harder. So kudos to all three of you and to everybody else as well who does this unsung job. And I call it a job because it is, I frankly see it as a job, because you're devoting time, effort and the mental energy to it for not being paid. So it is what it is. And we're happy doing it until as long as we can.
Yeah.
100%.
And I wonder, I know both of you have done interviews. How do both of you prepare for interviews?
Like podcast interviews?
Yeah, either written or audio or video.
So yeah, with me just starting my podcast, I think it was like 6 months ago. I made a priority, at least starting out, to not have an author interview unless I've read the book. It makes the conversation much easier to go forth. I highlight certain aspects of the book, and Paul, like, we can talk about our interview. Certain parts of the book that I really liked and I thought I wanted to expand upon, so that the audience and the listeners knows what the book is about, what the tropes are, what the themes are. Basically, hit all the main points that I want anyone listening to understand. And then we'll get into, like, I'm not one who just writes all the questions going on. I make bullet points. So I want to just an introduction. Okay, I want to talk about this, and this, and then we'll go like on a random tangent. Like, I think we talked about the Wheel of Time, Paul, and that took a good little bit. The TV show and the series. I talk about suggestions that you have for books that you like that are not well popular under the radar stories. It's just finding your right groove of what you like to talk about, what the author would like to talk about, and just finding good middle ground. Make it a conversation. Don't make it like you're giving a job interview, because that's not going to make you look good. It's not going to come across as authentic. Just be yourself and just have fun with it. That's how I go about it.
Paul, you want to tackle this question?
Well, yeah, I do. My primary interviews obviously now are thanks to Steve on his channel. We do page chewing and we interview creators from all over the community, writers, bloggers, authors. For me, I don't necessarily have to have read the book. I need to know something about the author, something about what they write about. I try to read the book. Sometimes I don't get to it. But what I don't, it's almost like that's a real advantage, as Blaise says. I totally understand that. But I also sometimes I want to go in without any preconceived notions or even knowing in depth about what the author writes. And then usually what happens is 99% of the time, I put that book in my TBR thanks to what the author says, and then I read it, and usually I love it. So, but I do on my blog, on my website as well, I do an interview feature called 6 Elemental Interviews. So I pose 6 questions to writers about their work and what they write and why they start writing and what they like, and I try to keep it pretty straightforward but similar. And I find that 6 questions is it's meaty enough to get some really juicy nuggets about the author, but it's not too overwhelming that because everyone's busy. So I try to keep it somewhat stimulating but fun. And so far, I mean, I've got some amazing responses from the creatives that I encourage you to check it out. Not because I'm the board review, but more for the authors. Actually, the page 2 episode that Steve and I have this evening with Natanya Barrett, and she's one of the I've read her books, phenomenal author. She's coming on at 7 p.m. with Steve and I, and she's one of the authors I've had the privilege of interviewing for 6 Elementals. So for me, it's more about I want to understand what I don't want to say what makes the author tick, but certainly some of their motivations for writing, why they write what they write, what are the themes, because I'm a big theme person. I want to know what your book is about, if there's some central theme or themes, and and I want to know what motivates you to write and who your writing heroes, and what you like to read, and what gets you jazzed about doing what you do. So in terms of preparation, those are the things that I focus on when it comes to, because to me it's all about the people, right? It all starts with the person. So the work is really important. Obviously, that's what we're talking about. whether you're a booktuber or a writer, what you put on booktube, or what you write down in your written blog, or what you write about as a writer. But for me, it's much more about preparing about the people. So I usually do my homework in terms of how old the person is, and what they like to read, what they like to write. Do they have any specific passions or causes that really get them jazzed? So that's the things that I prepare for.
I'm going to riff off what Blaise and Paul said, like similar to both of them. So I'm kind of similar to Paul, that I like to read the book before I interview author, just because I usually try to pitch them as like, I'll review a book, but if I love it, I don't say if I love it, because usually I also like to offer an interview to authors. I have mostly done email interviews because of course we didn't have. I wasn't really much of a YouTube person. I like to do a lot of digging around the author's website and blog posts, just because I want to find juicy details of what they have talked about previously with regards to word building. My mind is a weird place, that I'm always interested to know what the author was thinking when they did this, or what are their favorites, what are their hobbies. Like, for example, Paul, if I was interviewing you, I would ask you, because if I know you have mentioned in the past that you also like to visit the Caribbean and you like the warm beaches and snow. Are you into cricket? Like, that's some of the things which will, it's like, when people talk like this, it clues me. Then I'll do this. And then depending on what, if I've read something particular in the book that I love, I would like to expand on that. For example, with Richard Nell, I wanted to ask him about this fact, that he had opened up with the cannibalistic line. What drove him to write it that way? Did he want to grab the reader's interest right off the bat, or that's an incredible line? So it's things like these. So for me, my interviews run a little bit longer. Like the email interviews, I go anywhere from 10 to 14 questions. Sometimes people have been kind enough, like for example, Craig Schaefer. Shout out to him. I always have so many questions for him. Like, I do these state of the Schaefer interviews at the year, and where I'll kind of split them into two interviews on 2 separate days, just because there's so many questions for him. And Craig has transitioned recently, so it's actually her name is Heather Schaefer. So my apologies. Heather is really kind enough to kind of always tell me, to answer all of my questions. Recently, taking the clue from Steve and Paul, I've recently also started interviewing authors on YouTube. I have a series called Authors and Their Favorite Books, where we discuss their favorite books and we get to talk about that. And I've only done 2 author interviews so far, where I actually just interviewed them about their not it's just separate from the series. I did an interview with David Oliver, whom I really enjoyed, his Great Heart series, and actually I just finished taping yesterday with Peter Clines, whom I've loved for his X Heroes and his most recent book, The Broken Room. And I'm hoping to post it in maybe a couple of weeks or so. But for me, it's more of like digging into the author's background, digging into the author's work, and then of course the extra questions of just based on if they have expressed any other interest besides writing, because that's how my mind works. I want to know the author as an entire person, and also of course about their books in the series.
What about you, Steve? What's your interviewing preparation techniques?
I try to, like Mihir said, I try to look at their bio and their website and what their education was, or what they wrote. Sometimes they'll put a lot of detail into like their childhoods, or what they enjoyed, or how they grew up, or where they went to school, or what they did before. So I try and get questions from there, and I also try to watch or read past interviews, because I don't want to ask the same questions over and over. And as a reader, I have there's things that I want to ask about. I want to ask about writing, but I don't want to get too in the weeds, because I think you'll lose people who aren't writers. They just want to know about the author and about the book. So I try not to get too inside baseball with that, because number one, I don't know enough about it to talk about it. So I try to not get too deep into that. I want to know a little bit, but I also want to know about them and their hobbies. And I always try to end on something positive and something that try to keep things upbeat and fun. Thus, then, like you all mentioned about just like a job interview, you don't want it to be like that, because it's really awkward and weird. So you try to keep things loose and open.
Well, I know that I mean, I think we could probably talk for a long time. We want to respect your time both. I know Mihir said he's got young kids, he's got lunch. I know Blaise is a busy man. We don't want his wife to be like, "You're still in there locked in with these guys." And Steve is busy too as well. But I cannot thank you two enough for joining us. You're both amazing. so much respect and admiration for what you do, and just thank you for what you do, and just realize that it is making a real impact in the writing community, and we truly appreciate it, and we're very humbled to have you join us. Just while we're wrapping up, do you both mind telling us, what your preferred social media platforms are, where to get a hold of you, where to see your reviews, your podcasts, anything that you're doing, anything that you'd like to, any way to get a hold of you that you'd like to mention?
Sure. So my Twitter handle is at Under the Radar B2. I do book reviews on WordPress at undertheradarsffbooks.com. I also do a podcast, which I share on Twitter whenever I release it. I swear I'm going to get back to releasing episodes on a regular basis. I've been lacking a little bit in that. Reach out to me anytime you want. Always happy to share book recommendations with authors and readers. So it's been a joy being part of this community.
Well, Paul, Steve, thank you so much for having me. I'm part of an amazing team over at Fantasy Book Critic. So if you just Google search the term Fantasy Book Critic, one word, separate words, it'll lead you to our blog site. We are currently 7 different bloggers who are posting the reviews almost daily with interviews and giveaways. One thing I do like to highlight is that we like to make our giveaways worldwide. So if you don't have to be always in the US, you can be anywhere in the world, you can participate in our giveaways. We are also found on Twitter at Fantasy Book Crit, because Twitter doesn't allow maximum space. I'm personally found on Goodreads, and yeah, we are always we try to make sure that we at least get go through as many review requests as possible. So if you have a book, let us know. That we have how to approach us on our website. And yeah, thank you, Steve and Paul, for having us today and for this amazing chat. And now I got to know that Blaise, I knew Blaise from Twitter, but I didn't know that he had a podcast. So I'm going to check that one out as well. Blaise, thank you for letting me know about that.
Yeah, it's great stuff. It's a great podcast.
You're welcome. Let me know and I can send you the link.
Cool.
And Steve, what's the best place to get a hold of you, my friend, and all your...
Well, the best place is probably here on YouTube, or I can also be found on pagechewing.com. Or I also use Twitter, Steve Talks Books, or Vero. I'm over on Vero as well, because I'm weird. But thanks to Blaise and Mihir for taking the time. I know you're both really busy, so really appreciate you taking the time to come by and chat with us. It's been a pleasure getting to know more about both of you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. It was really fun.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.